Hi there. The Church of Nowhere on stereotyping. Try to avoid it. But this is actually in two parts. One is saying that stereotyping is not as evil as people make out it to be. So sometimes political correctness is taken too far. And the other part is just saying that, if you expect too much from people as a result of stereotyping them, usually by their appearance, is that you then when they don't live up to that expectation, you become angry and frustrated with them or disappointed with them, and that's kind of a negative space to be in as well. So the first thing is to say that when you take a certain group of people, like for example, it might be Nigerians, all right, and the thing about it is people say, well, don't stereotype Nigerians. What is a Nigerian? It's a collection of individuals, right? All different people. But then when those individuals become enculturated, when they gather together in a sort of Nigerian space, a collective, if you like, then very often, they take on or emphasize all the characteristics of a Nigerian, even though individually they may be different. So the person maybe have lived in Nigeria for a long time, and they've gotten over their culture shock, because when you go into a different country, you always get culture shock, right? You always sort of think, why are these people doing and saying this? This is not how I do things and say things in my country. So you do have to go through culture shock, right? Which is nasty, which is really quite nasty and makes you kind of very depressed and fed up, and you don't know who you are and you don't know who they are, and you get resentful and all this. So you go through various waves of they call culture shock, and you normally come out with an accommodation, but still there are things about the particular culture which you dislike, and that you speak against somehow sometimes as well. And you sometimes you say, all Nigerians are this and that, when you know it logically you're wrong, but at the same time it seems that there are cultural characteristics of Nigerians that you really really find horrible. Not to put a finer point on it. And you're kind of you're distressed by some things that you see in Nigerian culture, and you just can't get your head around. Even after you've gotten over your culture shock and accepted that people do things and think things in a different way than you still really, really don't like some aspects of Nigerian culture. And that's not being racist, you see, because it's got nothing to do with the colour of the skin, or even with their religion, because Nigerians can be Muslim, animist, Christian, New Age religious movements. There's a lot of them there. It's and individual Nigerians, lovely. You could talk to individual Nigerians, shake hands with them, be polite to them, which you should be anyway. Talk to them about banal subjects and controversial subjects if you knew them well. And lovely people, and you could say, well, Nigerians are lovely people, but like en masse, as far as when they all gather together in one place, there are aspects of their culture that you don't like, and that's okay. You don't have to like them, but of course you don't sort of say all Nigerians are this or that, because that would be illogical and racist in a sense, because you're really just sort of saying, well, because they're black people, I don't like them. But then if there's certain aspects of black American culture that you don't like, you're not sort of saying all black Americans are X, Y, Z, but it's just that a lot of them seem to be. They sort of comply with their cultures. I mean, it could be that you don't like, I don't know, Tower Hamlets in London, right? You could say, I don't like the people of Tower Hamlets because they're not very friendly, or they're a bit aggressive, or they're a bit cliquey, or they're not very nice to strangers or something. And that could be true, but of course, an individual from Tower Hamlets could be a lovely person to know, They could be really nice. You get on with them and even fall in love with them or something. Do you know what I mean? And often, you say, I don't like Germans, I don't like Germans. And then you meet a German and she's lovely or he's lovely and you fall in love, right? So there you are. You say it just that the black swan has disproved your all swans are white hypothesis. Um, and yet there are a lot of swans that are white, for all that, really. So you're not wrong when you say all swans are white. It's just that if there's a black swan around, then you just can't really say all swans are white, but you can say generally speaking they're white. And I've now discovered a black one, which is great, lovely, and I don't even mind. Well, sometimes I could mind that all swans are white. I don't like the color white for some reason. You have an issue with the color white, or with the color black or something. But that's your psychological issue. You've got to kind of look at that for why is that kind of thing. Do you know? I mean, you could look at. And let's take an all less controversial group of people. Well, they were controversial at the time. The hippies of Dunmanway in West Cork, Ireland, right? Hippies on their own, lovely people, get on with them. It's great. Share some drugs with them or something. They're lovely. But when they're all in a field together, you begin to see things that you don't like about hippies. Like they're full of humbug and hypocrisy. They get very stressed. They're very aggressive. They can have a lot of fights with people. They can spend more money than they should on drugs and alcohol. Some of them are real brew crew. Some of them were kind of, ex-junkies. They were quite dishonest with each other and with themselves as well. I mean, there's a whole list of characteristics about hippie culture in Dunmanway, West Cork, that you really, really don't like. You could really take exception to, even to the extent that you might say, I don't like any bloody hippies. You know what I mean? And yet that's wrong, because there are lots of hippies. Well, A, what is a hippie anyway? And B, there could be lots of people living in that area that you do get on with, that you do like, or could be friends with. But your prejudice, your stereotyping of hippies, actually prevents you from seeing, the good guys from the bad guys. You know what I mean? You actually lose a certain amount of the ability to actually judge people for who they are, and for not and because you're judging them from the sort of stereotypic angle that you've developed, because if you're extrapolating from maybe a bad experience of, I don't know, 10 hippies, and from that you're towering all hippies as being bad, like, you know what I mean? So of course that gets more and more problematic as as the group of people goes up in numbers. So you might say, I don't like black African Americans, right? And that becomes more of an absurd thing to say when you think about it, really. Although there may be aspects of black American culture that you really, really don't like. For example, physical punishment of children. I mean, that you may hate that, and yet you kind of observe that a lot of black Americans hit their kids, but then a lot of black Americans don't hit their kids, so that's grand, so that's good. So stereotyping is a problem, but it's not. I don't think it's as bad as people make out it to be. There's no smoke without fire. There's a kernel of truth in how we stereotype people. There are gender differences. There are racial differences. You'd be a fool really not to see these. It just depends on what you make of it. I mean, it's like what Stephen Fry talked about LBGT. He said one day we'll just have, like, gay people, like we look at trains and cars. Well, there's a train, there's a car, there's a gay couple, there's a straight couple, there's a couple with children, there's a couple who doesn't have children. We won't make anything of it. We won't say, oh, you're gay or what. It'd be just something so natural, and that would be the end of stereotyping, really. That would be a kind of a positive outcome. But I mean, you might be in a gay club, and you might think to yourself, although I'm gay, I really don't like the gay scene. Do you know what I mean? There's lots and lots of things I don't like about the gay scene. And I don't fit in with the gay scene. I don't go to gay clubs because I just don't fit in with all the other gays there, even though I'm gay. Is that prejudice? Is that stereotyping? I don't know, because you're stereotyping within your own social, cultural, sexual orientated group. You know what I mean? So that there's all that side of it as well. So if it's all right for a gay person to criticize gayness, why isn't it all right for anybody to criticize gayness? You know, well, they could be without becoming prejudiced or mad. Actually, that's the first point I want to raise, and the second point is going to be about expectations and stereotyping, especially on the basis of appearance, which I think is a fascinating subject, perhaps more fascinating really than the topic I've just introduced, as far as I'm concerned. But maybe I'll actually park it there, because I've made enough points, as it were, covered enough ground as it is, to have loads of comments maybe coming in to YouTube. Although YouTube isn't as good as it used to be. It used to be far more like Facebook and Twitter, and people used to comment and argue, and now they don't, which I think is a great shame, because you have to go on Facebook or Twitter now to have an argument with people, which I really regret, because I don't like Facebook and I don't like Twitter. I would much rather talk to people on YouTube, and yet, we can't even do that. We can't even make video responses anymore like we used to. YouTube doesn't feel like a community anymore. And I suspect that's kind of deliberate and actually for commercial reasons. But that's another story for another day, isn't it, really? So thanks very much for listening. And if you do want to comment on anything I've said, please do.